Hi y'all. Alright, so today we're going to be doing one color printmaking, which is one of my favorite art mediums, and I think it's a really great one to do with people who are new to art or kids, because you can get really cool results without a lot of need for materials or skills. The other thing I really like about it is it's really a meditative process because you do a lot of the same things over and over again. I also really love printmaking because I think it's a really interesting interaction between copying, preservation, and degradation. So when you design a template with a print, you only get so many prints before the template degrades where you can't get it anymore, and different mediums have different degradation levels. And I think it's interesting that this thing you use to build copies will eventually stop working. I think it's an interesting part of printmaking. So that's what we're doing today. Those are my opinions. What we're gonna do now, as always, is talk about the history of the medium. I'm gonna read you a little bit of this stuff, as always, resources in the doobly-doo. So, printmaking is an art form that involves transferring images from a matrix, or a template, onto another surface, which is usually fabric or paper. It can be made out of anything, honestly. Traditionally, it's metal or wood, but you can also use glass. You carve and decorate the matrix, or you use a chemical to etch it if you're doing etching. You put ink on the template, transfer the image to the paper. The history of printmaking begins in the Han Dynasty in China. We're talking like 200 BCE to like 220 ADE. I guess it's CE now. It's Common Era and before Common Era. And then we know that we started to do this on paper around the 7th century. Then we get movable type. Then eventually printmaking leads us to bookmaking, which is exciting. We're gonna look at a few famous works because you've probably seen famous works of printmaking. So one of the most famous printmakers is Albert Dürer. He has these really dense technical line work, and they're these beautiful emotional pieces of art. You've probably seen them in like a history book or something. I think they're really cool. One of the most famous is this 36 Views of Mount Fuji. I took a lot of Duolingo Japanese, but I don't think I can say this artist's name. This is a series, and you can see Mount Fuji in the back. This one, the way that they get all the different colors is each separate color is its own template, and then you line them all up to get the end result. So the more colors there are in a print, the more templates you need in order to make it work. So those are two famous works of art. And we can also think about things like Andy Warhol's soup cans. We can think about things like book covers, books, all of those are printmaking art. I hope that was motivating. We are going to switch gears, go get in the studio, and talk about tools. Hello, welcome back to the studio. I'm working on another project too, so please enjoy Mannequin in the back. What we're going to talk about first is the tools, and then I'm going to do a little bit of safety stuff, and then I'm going to talk about how to DIY your own kit, because this is a very easy medium to get into. You don't actually need too much equipment. If you do decide to get into this hobby though, having nicer equipment will make you have better results as you go. So the first thing that you're going to need is your template. This is going to be something to carve. I use these blocks. These are linoleum on wood. I buy these pre-done. You can make these though. They sell them at most craft stores in a bunch of different sizes. This one's already been used. The next thing that you need is going to be something to carve with. I have these power grip tools. And that's what they look like. So each one of them has different tips, and so you can get different shapes with carving. And you'll see why these come up in the safety brief for sure. Okay. The next thing that you're going to need is something to ink your template with. I use Speedball printing ink. I have a few different colors. We'll talk about different things you can use, but this is the one that I like and this is the brand that I like. The next thing's kind of weird because it's not really something we think about, but it will make your life a lot better. You're gonna need something to mix and spread all of your pigment on before you apply it, because if you try to directly apply your pigment to your template, it might not go evenly and you might miss pieces. So using a mixing surface can make your life a lot easier. If you have space, most of the time what people do is they glue glass to something and then use that. Mine is taped because it is cut glass, so the edges are very, very sharp. If you do something like pull a picture frame glass out, it wouldn't be as sharp, so you might not have to tape it. I do also like having the edge though, because it's a little bit easier to see as you're digging through stuff. The next tool is a brayer, and it looks like a smooth paint roller, which is because that's pretty much what it is. Instead of being fabric, it's rubber, and this gives us a really good even covering of ink. I will make one note, this is a very specialty tool. Things like the blades and the glass you could use for other stuff. This one is a specialty tool though. It puts paint on stuff and that's it. One more note about these, they are not meant to ever lay flat because it can deform the roller and it won't spread evenly anymore. So if you have one, try to hang it or put it where it's not resting on the roller. The last thing that we need is nice paper, and it's just depending on what kind of pigment you're using is how nice your paper should be. Because I'm using Speedball ink, I'm using thicker watercolor paper, but if you were using something different, it might not matter as much if you use like printer paper or something. So I'm going to talk about how to DIY all of these pieces, but I do want to make a note about all of the safety stuff first. Sharp. These things are extremely sharp. They are meant to gouge out parts of rubber or wood. I've used these for wood carving. These things are sharp. You will be putting pressure on them and they can really hurt you if you gouge your hand. Cut away from you, know where your fingers are, be safe. As we talked about before, you'd want to be careful when you're working with paint. This is toxic, don't eat it. I use water soluble ink, so it's not the end of the world if it gets on stuff, but if you're using an oil-based paint, be super careful with it. And if you're using water-based, be sure to clean everything before it dries. Okay, so let's talk about how to make this all cheaper. For your templates, one of the easiest things that you can do is potatoes. So you can use anything like, you can buy linoleum tiles from Lowe's for like cents for a tile. You can do scrap wood, you can use foam from a takeout box. Anything that you have the power to carve or pressure lines into can be used as a template. For your blades, you can use X-Acto blades. You could, and if you're using something like soft foam, you could just use a ballpoint pen. If you are doing something harder like wood or linoleum, I do recommend buying the nice carving set, just because you will be putting yourself at a lower risk of damage than trying to like force an X-Acto knife through wood. For ink, You can use pretty much anything, again, depending on your medium of paper that you want to use at the end. I recommend acrylic paint if you don't want to buy specifically printmaking ink, just because it's going to be the easiest and will. I don't recommend watercolor or like pen ink for this because it'll be a little bit too thin and it'll be a hard mess to clean, but you could if you are desperate. For a mixing surface, you can use cardboard for most things. And then for a brayer, this is going to be one of the ones that are kind of hard to fake. And it's also one of the tools that I'm like, oh, I don't know, you should buy it, because it is very specific. But you could use a brush, you could use something like, you know, even a rag soaked in the paint would work just fine. Just something that you can evenly apply pigment with. I do want to make one more note. A lot of the prints that I work with are pretty small, so I can evenly apply pressure with just my hand. If you're using a template bigger than what you can comfortably press, you should probably look at something to help you evenly apply pressure to the entire template. For really fancy ones, there's whole printmaking machines that evenly press your whole stuff for you. Or you can just use something like a rolling pin or a paperweight. Just you want to make sure you're able to press everything evenly. So those are all the tools, those are all our safety, and those are what we can do to DIY it to make it cheaper. So let's talk about what we actually do to make a print. The first step is you're going to design your print, and you want to find something with a lot of different texture or values because that'll end up being more of an interesting print. I went through and sketched a little bit. I want to do my cat. Very lovely. I also had to take stickers off of other blocks. So there we are. After you design that, what you want to do is you want to transfer your image onto your template. I normally, like, you can kind of see the Sharpie lines. I just draw it on the template and then carve it off. If you do it this way, you want to make sure whatever you are using to draw with will not interact with your ink. So for example, I used an alcohol-based Sharpie and then I used water-based printing ink, so none of the drawing will come off unexpectedly onto my final print. You can always just clean it too. Just be aware that if you use a water-soluble drawing thing and then you use a water-soluble ink, your prints might not turn out exactly how you want them to. Okay, so we've designed our print, we've put it on our block. The next part is you carve away everything. It's really important, and it's kind of easy to get into this, especially if you've never done it before. You don't want to just draw and carve out an outline of just your item. You really want to create textural and tonal values by experimenting with the depth and how all the cross hatching and stuff works. Your first one might just be an outline, and that's okay, but just try to think that this is a different medium and I'm not drawing. Just think about it. If it doesn't sink in the first time, that's okay. The other thing is, if you are putting text, it needs to be backwards on your template. So if you put text this way, it's gonna go that way when you're done. So unless you want it to be backwards on purpose, carve it backwards, it will print the correct way. So those are my carving, drawing technique notes for this. What you're gonna do next is you're gonna ink it. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm gonna go get my the one that I've been working on. So I got a pretty simple one. I don't know if I'm gonna add more depth to it, but here we go. So what you do for printmaking, you take your mixing template. I was gonna put my notebook under this so I do not make a mess. Find the ink that you've been playing with as a fidget toy. So ink onto your mixing tablet. If you're making your own pigment, you want to make sure everything's smooth. If you're using old pigment, make sure everything's smooth. Just take like a putty knife and run it through a few times. So now we have this. And take your brayer, and here, let me see if I can get you to come down here with me. And you're gonna gently roll through. It'll take a second to get all pigmented. And then notice it's really thick and it's kind of wavy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some scrap paper and just roll it through. What you want is an even coating of paint on both your template line and on your roller, but you don't want it to be streaky and you don't want it to be super thick. So I'm gonna roll a little bit more. I'm gonna roll a little bit more. That's pretty good. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And then you take your template and you apply some ink. I might have to put more ink on everything. So now we have a fully inked template. So we're gonna take our paper and kind of put it like this, I think would be nice. And then this one's a little bit bigger, so I probably should have got like a rolling pin or something, but here we are. Then we lift it off. Oh. Not enough ink. That's okay. Okay. And then I'm gonna try to not get ink anywhere else, but I'm unfortunately tragically messy. We're not surprised. Try again. Ooh, I think I might have moved it. We'll see. Oh, we're getting closer. That kind of looks cool. Haunted. All right, more ink, let's go. I'm thinking the issue that I'm having is the roller is not perfectly even anymore because it's kind of old. So I think we have an ink spot missing. Okay, once again we ink our boy. All right, I'm optimistic. Third time's the charm. Let's go. I also might not have put enough pressure in the middle. Oh, we're getting very close now. Okay, I'm gonna set that one out. Apparently I need to just like go super hard on the ink. Do not. I'm gonna kind of cheat. I'm worried that some of these are gonna fill up, but I would like one nice one. Possum. Possum's gonna come help. All right, let's try again. Girl, we are not looking out. I'm gonna run out of paper. I don't know, boys. We might be getting some not the so great prints today. Don't do this. This is not a good way to apply ink. Possum, you're in the way. All right, this is our last piece of paper, so if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Ooh. That's kind of cool looking, but it did not turn out. Well, that is all the paper I have though. So that be what it be, I guess. Whoops. That's okay, it happens. I think my roller's a little messed up. I think this ink might be a little too old too, so it's just kind of thicker than what I'm used to. I don't know what I'm gonna do with all these prints. I'm kind of bummed it didn't work out, but that's okay. It's like that sometimes. All right, so the next step is very crucial. You need to clean everything. So I'm gonna go rinse all my tools off. Again, this ink isn't like super like environmentally friendly, so be cautious, but everything just gets rinsed off with soap and water. Unless you're using oil-based stuff, then follow the directions for the oil-based stuff. So that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you next week.